Hi, good day, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're getting closer to the election, and Gambians must have a shopping list. We should not only vote people in office because we know them. We should not vote people in office because we support a party. We should now begin to vote people in office because they can make a difference for the life and livelihoods of the average Gambian. Therefore, we need a bucket list of the things that we want, the things that we expect, and the things that we desire as Gambians. See, gone are the days where people vote because they like you. Gone are the days where people vote because they're related to you. And gone should be the days where people vote because you buy their vote. They expect something from you or you give them something in return. We have suffered considerably because of the ignorance of the Gambian electorate. Yaya Jammeh, to a point, was a problem. But the Gambian electorate were a bigger problem than Yaya Jammeh, and that's what really got us in the mess we found ourselves as a country. Now, how can we get that fixed? The best way we can get it fixed is to fix ourselves. How can we fix ourselves? Begin to ask ourselves, what do we deserve as Gambians? Well, I came up with 5 fundamental things that we need to ask and we need to get from our politicians. The most important thing that the processes that our people get into, i.e. procurement, i.e. bilateral relationships and everything else, we need this thing to be transparent. How can they be transparent? It can only be transparent if we, the people, ask the government that we want a Freedom of Information Act. Therefore, we should not vote anyone in office if they cannot give us a new Freedom of Information Act bill. We should not vote anyone in office if they cannot change the status quo of the average Gambian, i.e. the way we live, how we live, and what we go through. So a Freedom of Information Act is very important. A Freedom of Information Act is very crucial and key to the budding democracy we want. So let's not vote for any party, A, B, C, or D. Let us vote on an agenda. And the agenda is an agenda that will promote and foster a better Gambia for all. For the longest of time, we have been making people stronger than the very people who entrust them with power. So starting with the Freedom of Information Act, I think will go a long way in making us a better people and a better country. Another thing that we need, and we need to do something, and sooner we do it the better, is to make sure we have a debt legislation ceiling. A debt legislation ceiling means the government of the Gambia cannot borrow more than X percentage of this current year's budget. What does that do? All these ambitious projects we are seeing will no longer be. Why will they not be? Because if there is a ceiling that you cannot surpass, you cannot finance an ambitious project. The Minister of Finance cannot be a political ally of the president, and that's why our country is where it is today. So if we are to vote, we need people, politicians, who are going to give us an agenda, not personality. I care less what Barrow does. What I care about is what he should have done for me and you. So therefore, all our politicians, we should make sure that a debt legislation ceiling is something we want embedded into the agenda they're fighting for us. Thirdly, everything that was the reason we booted Jammeh out are yet to be realized. What do I mean by that? We wanted the seditious laws in our books to be a thing of the past. We want the draconian media laws that were in our books to be a thing of the past. We wanted, the Public Order Act to be a thing of the past. All these things are more prevalent today than ever before. Why? Because we, the Gambians, didn't put pressure on this particular administration to make sure those things are no longer. So therefore, we want to make sure that the Public Order Act, the draconian laws, and off by showing Gambians, we should now invest our time in telling politicians what we want and what we expect of them. Fourth, Zambia we have. You cannot have a new country without that country having a christening. You cannot have a new country without the country having new ideals. Well, the christening of the Gambia and the ideals that we want can only be espoused in a constitution. If for 48 going 60 months, President Barrow cannot give us a constitution, therefore he is not fit for purpose. And therefore any well-meaning Gambian who prefer to vote for President Barrow, I think is more of a selfish Gambian who thinks of self, either through financial rewards or tribal affinity or any other social benefit they're going to get voting for him. But for almost 60 months, he cannot give us a constitution. Therefore, he is not fit for purpose. That's four. The fifth thing that all Gambians should be mindful of is to understand that building a country is a process. And the process is not short term, it's medium to long term. And this medium to long term needs a framework. And this framework can only come about when things are put in perspective. And when we say perspective, we want to say in 50 years from now, this is the Gambia we want. If we have that picture in our minds, we will now take the baby steps periodically to make sure that that Gambia we want will be realized. And the only way that Gambia will be realized is to have sustainable plans. And these sustainable plans goes beyond political parties, but it's more or less about how the country sees itself, where the country wants to go, and how the country is going to go to that place. That's the only way our country, the Gambia, can prosper. We the people are very powerful because we have a right, and it's called our day. Just like the Creoles will say, 99 days for the thief and 1 day for the master yard or the homeowner. Equally, elections do the same thing for Gambians. We have 99 days, i.e. a 5-year term, for them to do whatever they want, just like the president is doing today, indifferent to our collective needs. But the 1 day we have is the day we go to the vote and say yes or no. And I think the only way that can happen is, one, for us to sensitize and educate ourselves. And in educating ourselves, we should not only educate ourselves towards the right that we have to vote, but we should vote wisely, we should vote our conscience, and we should vote for the future of our country. The way we can vote for the future of our country is to put country before self. The only way we can vote for the advancement of the country is to make sure that we have courage of conviction. And in courage of conviction, we all know right and wrong, but sometimes our selfish nature and self-centered attitudes let us put self before country. And whenever we put self before country, country loses. And we should not afford to allow Gambia to lose, because Gambia has lost for far too long. Gambia is a country with a budding democracy and a demography that is made up of young people. People who are between the ages of 1 and 32 to 34. What are we as a whole generation going to tell the next generation of Gambians that we are supposed to gift them a better Gambia and we are not doing? What are we going to tell them? How do we feel when we go to bed knowing that our country is subpar, our country is below expectation, our country is not progressing? Well, it means we the people must come up with corrective actions to fix our country. And these corrective actions are not going to be sweet. These corrective actions are not going to make everybody happy. But this corrective action starts with us, we the Gambian, doing what we ought to do for the next generation of Gambian. What me and you and what President Barrow is doing today is not to make my life better. It's to make the life of the next generation of Gambians better. And it's an investment that all of us need to take. And that investment comes with sacrifices. And those sacrifices mean we are not going to waste state resources as we're doing today. So I hope that we need a pledge from the politicians that whoever is elected in office post-December will no longer have an allowance to feed themselves. They should feed themselves like any other public servant who is paid a salary to live within that salary. They should also have a curb, a percentage that they should pay in terms of the utility they use at the State House. Personal utility. I'm not talking about securing them. I'm not talking about the perimeter, but the very household that they live in. If President Barrow wants AC 24/7, let him pay for it. If the next president wants AC, air conditioners 24/7, let them pay for it. It's so disheartening that a country of the poor, the country where the average Gambian lives below $1.50 a day, our presidents don't have the conscience to live a life that is commensurating with the life of the average Gambian. This is the problem we have. We need leaders who have conscience. We need leaders who have courage of conviction. We need leaders with a vision and a dream, not a dream to better yourself, but a dream to take the Gambia to the next level. That's the ticket item that we need to vote our next president on. Not I am better than Barrow because I am a Mandinka. I am better than Barrow because I'm educated. We have had many uneducated Gambian who have become a problem to the collective good. So the criteria must not be education, but the criteria should be a vision. And Gambia right now lacks leadership. And when I say it lacks leadership, I'm not only talking about presidential aspirants. I'm talking about leadership in all spheres of life, i.e. religious, i.e. social, i.e. political. And this is what we need to change. And we can only change it when we decide to make sure we do right by country. Mr. President, you are not fit for purpose. Respectfully, I have to tell you. And the reason why you are not fit for purpose, the very reason we brought you in, and yes, I will say we, because we collectively played a part to bring you in. You have failed your mandate. You have failed Gambians. You have let Gambians down because what's been so important to us hasn't been important to you. 5 years you can't give us a new constitution to make sure dictatorship is buried. 5 years, the vandals, the economic gangsters are now your strange bedfellows, Mr. President. How do you feel when we see you whining and dining and dancing with the very people who looted our commonwealth? Mr. President, the people who maimed, loot, killed Gambians are walking the streets of Gambia like without impunity. How do you feel, Mr. President? Mr. President, this country needed a transition, not someone to stay in like you have stayed. You have overstayed your welcome, and it's high time you understand that. And it's high time also, Mr. President, you have a chat with your conscience and ask yourself, have you been fair with the Gambia? Because the Gambia gave you so much. Mr. President, you used to pay your power bills. You used to pay to feed your kids. And I'm not sure whether your kids went to private schools like they're going to private schools today. So if you've been given that opportunity by the Gambia, please do right by the Gambia. Mr. President, this is my anger. And this is the anger of many Gambians. Mr. President, this is my frustration, and it's the frustration of many Gambians. Mr. President, think bigger than self. Think country. Your kids will not enjoy Gambia if my kids don't enjoy Gambia. And if the kid in Farato and the kid at Fatoto is not going to get social equity in this going concern of ours called the Gambia. And that's why I've said, Mr. President, you have failed and failed woefully on your contract with the people of this country. You have failed and failed woefully on your contract with the people of this country, because expectations was the currency we traded when we voted you in office. Expectations was the currency we traded when we voted you in office. And those expectations and hope have all been dashed because of selfish, self-centeredness of your personality in putting yourself before us. Mr. President, I don't think Gambians who are well-meaning will not forgive you. We cannot forgive you, and we should not forgive you, because we collectively suffered, and we didn't suffer because we want personal benefits. We suffered and we brought about a change because we wanted a collective good for the country we all love and we share. But what we have seen since you came to power is something that's not in our interest. What we have seen since you came in power is to perpetuate what was here, minus the killing and incessant arrest that we used to see. Therefore, Mr. President, to vote for you is to endorse a status quo that came in before 2016. You have continued the way Gambians used to live. People are getting public contracts in the tune of millions of dollars, wasting taxpayer money just to line people's pockets. Mr. President, people are dying in our hospitals because people are stealing. And you know, Mr. President, Gambians are saying crime is rife. There's criminal activity all over. I think that's petty crimes. Petty crimes because they boggle people's houses. They pick pockets. The real criminals are the people in suit and ties who are not making sure our hospitals get adequate funding and people die in those hospitals. And that's what I call criminal negligence. The complicity of the public servants and politicians who are doing what they are doing and making sure that the average Gambian suffers to the point it's causing fatality. It makes you people criminally negligent and criminally liable. That's my anger and frustration, Mr. President. And these are the things we want to change. And this is why we need to educate the voting class, the voters, that we need to do better. And in doing better, we need a scorecard and a checklist. The scorecard, we grade you, Mr. President, against the checklist we come up with. And if we grade you, we will know, like I said earlier, you are not fit for purpose. And you not being fit for purpose has nothing to do with intellect, has nothing to do with education, has nothing to do with social orientation, but it has everything to do with deliverables. You haven't delivered for us. You haven't given us what we deserve. You haven't given us what we expect. Therefore, Mr. President, you have become a liability to the Gambian. And since you are a liability to the Gambian, we cannot promote and foster your agenda of wanting to continue to lead us. And this is what we need to change. And we Gambians need to come together, or if not, we are collectively part of the problem. To DOI, to APRC, to UDP, to GDC, to Citizen Alliance, egos must be put aside. Personal interest and personal political party interest must be put aside. This is the time for Gambia to come together once again and make sure we have a meaningful transition. And the only way we can do it is to hit the reset button and say, once bitten, twice shy. We have been fooled, but we should not allow ourselves to go into election and allow another political party to come in and continue business as usual. We need a genuine transition, and the transition can happen when we Gambians come together and make sure we do right by country, to make sure that we usher in a temporal respite called a transition to fix our country. Our country needs fixing. Our country is bleeding. Our country is crumbling. Our country has become a derelict thanks to people who care less about country. How can we change that? Let us make sure we show the political class that we the people are their bosses. Let us show the political class we drive the agenda. They don't drive the agenda. But how can we drive the agenda when we don't have a plan? And the plan we need to have is to show them the things that we want them done. And let's see who can sell us an idea based on the vision we have for our country. Giving us roads like Mr. President has done is not what we want. Attempting to fix Banjul is not what we want, Mr. President. We want a government that comes in, make sure, Omar Jallo, how are you? Make sure that this country is fixed. The country cannot be fixed if it doesn't have a sustainable constitution, a constitution that reflects the will and the aspiration of the collective good of society, a constitution that gives us an equitable social contract and protects all. Mr. President, if you were not able to do that in this past 50 months going 60, you cannot be our solution. And therefore, me personally, I have X you on the list of people we should vote for, and we should enlighten and educate Gambians that you are not someone worthy to be given our vote, because you have failed us, you have miserably failed us, and you are indifferent to the plight of the Gambian. If you are not indifferent to the plight of the Gambian, before visiting GNPC, Ministry of Works, you should have gone to the hospitals in this country and see how people are dying. And that's why, Mr. President, I'm saying you and your people, be it your Minister of Health, be it your Minister of Finance, be it your Minister of Infrastructure, be it the people handling social issues, you are all complicit in the deaths of many Gambians happening daily in our derelict hospitals, Mr. President. Mr. President, to be the citizen-in-chief is to be compassionate. To be the citizen-in-chief is to have the will and aspiration of the people as your first point of order and your first call to duty. Mr. President, I, Nyang Jai, don't think what you have done since you came into power has shown us that what we need as Gambians is important to you. Before you put $35 million fixing Banjul, you should have fixed at least 2 good hospitals for us, one in Banjul and one at the center of the country, to make sure the rural poor also have access to healthcare and make sure that our social contract is equitable. Mr. President, your priorities are not Gambia's priorities. Your priorities is to make sure you sit at #1 Marina Parade, enjoy the food that we pay for, enjoy the AC that we pay for, and enjoy those luxury cars that the average Gambian is paying and financing for when they are dying in our derelict hospitals, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is why many enlightened Gambians, many conscious Gambians cannot align with you. It's not personal. It's nothing to do with you, the person, Mr. President. It has everything to do with what you have failed to do for the people of this country. It has everything to do with the contempt. I call it contempt. Your fellow citizens cannot be dying because of childbirth. Your fellow citizens cannot be failing their grades because of poor schools and poor instructions in schools. Your fellow citizens cannot be sleeping well at night because of crime. Yet still you want to tell us development is building roads, and in these building roads we have poor procurement guidelines to the point discretion is more prevalent than rule-based, and our tax monies are going wasted. This is the problem of this country. This is what a conscious Gambian and a conscientious Gambian is going to ask you to do. And Mr. President, please, for whatever is left of your term, see how best you can look at the social indicators of this country. I always tell you, and I'm going to tell you again, peace is just not the absence of war, but is the prevalence of social equity. And our country is not socially equitable, and our country, to be honest, is being dragged into, a place where it's going to be a problem for us, because we are not at peace, Mr. President. And everything you've been doing at the State House is further fragmenting a fragmented social fabric. Today you are inviting the Manjagos. Tomorrow you are inviting the Mauritanian Gambian. Day after tomorrow you are inviting the Sarahules. Please, Mr. President, after 22 or 24 years of division, we expect you, Mr. President, to bring our diverse peoples together, but not to fragment further our diverse people. In diversity, that's our strength. But the divide and rule is what you are promulgating. The divide and rule is what you are fostering, Mr. President. The State House is for Gambians. And whenever you use state resources, state time, because you are on our time, Mr. President, don't use our time to receive people based on tribal lines. Don't use our time. If you bring a group of carpenters, I will be happy. If you bring into State House a group of weldermen, I will be happy. If you bring into State House a group of masoners, I'll be happy. Don't you feel something in you, Mr. President, that is so shameful that you bring in a group of Wolofs, a group of Manjagos? Mr. President, it's 2021. We are a Gambian. We are a nation. A nation have national identity, and our national identity is called Gambians. Try and bring Gambians together and stop bringing people based on tribal lines. Our passports don't say Wolofs. Our national identity cards don't say Mandinkas. Our driver's license don't say Fullers or Sarahules. It has Gambians. Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, 3 times. Put some respect on that word called Gambian and start bringing in Gambians to that State House when you want to hear from them. What good will it do for you to hear from a group of Sarahules? Do you think when Nawe goes off, they will jump the Sarahule house? Every other household will go off because it's the households of Gambians. And this is why, Mr. President, we want you to start thinking with a bigger picture. But you see, selfishness and self-centeredness makes you think of self-perpetuation and how to perpetuate your political dominion. That's not the interest of our collective good. Our collective good is yearning for unity. If you extend an olive branch to all Gambians, irrespective of tribal affinity, you will be talking to them based on professions, based on trade, and based on association that promotes social cohesion. Everything you've done in the past 50 months is to further divide a divided country. Mr. President, help us help you, and in helping us is bringing us together. Diversity of this country needs to be showcased. The diversity of this country asks for tolerance. The diversity of this country calls for people to embrace. The diversity of this country calls for healing and reconciliation. The diversity of this country calls for the end of impunity, self-impunity, especially people who have done so much harm in the past and yet still being rewarded by you, by the power vested unto you by us. It means you are abusing the powers we vest on you. It means you are indifferent to our collective plight. The plight of the Gambian is to make sure that what we have suffered for far too long comes to an end. And that's why we need to educate each other to make sure we vote wisely and make sure that we bring an end to this madness we see in this beloved country of ours. We deserve better, Mr. President, and you surely are not giving us better. And it's a shame when you brag and pride about building roads. Build a Gambian, Mr. President. Build a better Gambian. This is better than building roads. Build a Gambian that will help build his or her country. That's what we expect of you, because that's why we called your government a transition government. And in transition is moving from what was to what ought to be or what is better. But Mr. President, you never moved. You are still stuck in that Jammeh era. Look at your presidential convoy. A shame on a poor country like ours, looking at those gas guzzlers guzzling the poor people's money. Mr. President, we feed, we clothe, we house, we educate, and yet still that's not enough. Give back to country, Mr. President. On that note, thank you all, and I will remind Gambians that we need to vote wisely. We need to make sure this status quo comes to an end, because this is not what we bargained for when we lined up December 1st to bring about the change. We lined up because we wanted a change from what was, like I said. We lined up because we were a divided nation and we wanted our nation to come back together and be one nation under God. We wanted to be a nation of our brothers and sisters in the same boat called the Gambia. Mr. President, on my scorecard and the scorecard of any conscious and conscientious Gambian, you have failed us. So the people who are behind you today, supporting your cause, are either selfish because of personal interest, or they're indifferent to the plight of Gambians because of ignorance. So let's teach one, each Gambian teach one. Elections are close but still far. We're talking about December. Let us endeavor to teach ourselves that what we are going through today is not what we deserve. We are a civilized nation amongst the League of Nations, and we deserve a better life than we have been given. This country needs to change, and we have the requisite toolkit and skill set to change it. It's the attitude and behavior that has brought this country to its knees. It's not that our president don't have a bachelor's or a master's. There are many people with doctorates, bachelor's and masters in our government, and they lack the moral aptitude. They lack the conviction to do the right thing. And that's what we need to change. And in changing it, we need to start teaching each other door to door, house to house. Because Lidu Dunda, what we are living under and what we are living with, it's not a life. What are we going to tell the kid that's 6, 7 today when they turn 18 and they become hopeless? It's my fault. It's your fault. It's our collective fault, because we are idly sitting by watching another administration doing wrong. Because today the kids that are out there stealing, that are out there on drugs, are as a consequence of maladministration of Yaya Jammeh. So should we allow another generation of Gambians to be like the hopeless kids we're seeing in our streets today? If we do that, the responsibility is not that of Adama Barrow, but it's our collective responsibility, because our collective power is greater than the power we entrust with Adama Barrow. So therefore, we have the power to boot him out. We have the power to bring a competent Gambian to give us what Gambia deserves and what the next generation of Gambians deserve from this country. God bless the Gambia. May God give us the courage to speak up. May God give us the courage to fight wrongs when we see it. May God give us the courage to take our country to the promised land. This country of ours is crying. This country of ours is sick. This country of ours has been made destitute by no other but her own daughters and sons. It has to come to an end, and it will come to an end if we all get up, wise up, rise up, and make sure the best Gambian lead us. And the best Gambian need not be educated, but has Gambia's love, Gambia's interest, and Gambia's passion and aspiration at heart. This place deserves better. P.S. Njai didn't politic for nothing. Dawda Jawara didn't politic for nothing. Sanjali Bojang didn't agitate independence for nothing. J.C. Faye didn't do everything he did for nothing. But if we idly sit by, we make the work of all these people I've named gone down the drain for more than 1 generation, 2 generations, and now we're allowing a 3rd generation of Gambian to suffer because of either our selfish attitude, because of our economic gain, or our lethargic indifference to the fixing of this country. We all need to wake up. We are at war, and we are at war with our pride and dignity as Gambians. We are at war with our pride and dignity as Gambians. Our pride and dignity as Gambians should make us make sure that we live in a country of dignified people. We live in a country that wants to be like any other country, be it America, be it England, be it Singapore, and we can do it. We can do it because we're human beings. God gave us the aptitude. God gave us the strength and God gave us the resources to make sure we do it. But what we lack is conscience, scruples, morality, and conviction. And that's what we need to instill in ourselves collectively as Gambians to make sure our country prosper, to make sure our country is cited as a beacon, not only in our West Africa, but in this world. Gambia, though small, can be a reference for global comparison and global best practices. But it will only happen if we speak truth to ourselves first before we speak truth to power. We need to agree collectively that Barrow doesn't hold our key to the promised land. We need to agree collectively he doesn't have the goods nor the wherewithal to take us to the promised land. We need to collectively agree that we have given him a chance and he has squandered the chance. We need to collectively agree that he is not interested in the welfare of the greater good of Gambian. And if that is the case, we need to get up and find who is interested in the welfare and the greater good of Gambians. So if we want to make it easy for ourselves, we should start the hashtag everybody else but Barrow, not anyone but Barrow, because anyone but Jammeh brought us anyone with Barrow. So now our hashtag should be everyone but Barrow. That should be the new Gambian hashtag, everyone but Barrow. And if we use that as our yardstick, our gold standard, we should start looking for the right Gambian to man that right position that's going to give us good night sleep because our homes will be secure, that will make us be healthy because we have good hospitals, that will give us good jobs so that we can prosper and make sure our kids go to good schools. Ask Mr. President why his kids are not in public schools, because he doesn't have faith in our public schools. Ask Mr. President if he is sick, whether he goes to our public hospitals. Well, if the answer is to the affirmative, like I said, then he should know that our public schools are not fit for purpose. Then he should know our hospitals are not fit for purpose. So before taking money telling us Nyomi Hakalang, to hell with Nyomi Hakalang. Give us hospitals, give us good schools, give us access to good health care. Then, Mr. President, we would have told you, job well done, gachangarama. But right now, Mr. President, wachanga sa anda. Sa anda gi, moy won, ñu génné fi li fi néwon. We wanted strong people to be out and we have stronger institutions. But corruption is rife today, Mr. President. You know our procurement systems are so poor. That's why we will go and outsource $35 million jobs, giving it to individuals without tender. What a shame and what a waste of our collective good, and surely people will pay. I am putting them on notice that they will pay for those crimes. And the people who die in our hospitals, our politicians, especially the ones in power, are criminally complicit because you're not putting the resources in the hospitals, thereby making the lives of those people at risk. And you should take responsibility for those people dying. And that's why Gambians, vote wisely and make sure your vote counts, and make sure your vote is to the best interest of this nation. The best interest of this nation, I don't know what it is. I know, me personally, what's the best interest for me, for my country is. Your vote is your choice, but use it wisely. Don't vote for a party because you affiliate tribally. Don't vote for a party because you know person X or Y. Vote for a party because it will take your country ahead, it will make your life better, and it will make the security and prosperity of this country to advance to higher notches. So long, Gambia. Let's love our country. Let's advocate for our country. Let's fight for our country, and let's fight our personal interests and make sure the collective interests reign. Once the collective interests reign, Gambia will survive. And Gambia has to, and Gambia must get out of this doldrum. God bless you all. I love you. And for the Gambia, I shall and will forever remain true. Thank you.